Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So I thought Ron Butler, Butler Mortgages, put an interesting perspective on what's going on in the real estate market in the Greater Toronto Area and Vancouver, Southern Ontario today. And I think it deserves some real thought. We are in a situation where, the last couple of years, we've had a lot of cranes in the Toronto skies building a whole bunch of condos that were justified based on pre-construction sales from a whole bunch of investors that were anticipating a astronomical continuation of price increases and not necessarily really good economics. And, in condo after condo, I'm told that what sold out were the small one bedrooms or bachelors, because that was sort of the smallest amount of money that the investors could invest to still sort of get their ante into this casino that was being built of the appreciating real estate prices. And they were all counting that with low mortgage rates, they'd be able to finance the vast majority of their purchase price with cheap debt and then rent those condos out at a profit. So they would get, number one, rental income to completely offset their mortgage payments. And number two, they'd be able to get this very attractive, massive price appreciation. What caused that? Number one, and most importantly, it was the fact that there wasn't enough housing. And so that therefore the supply of housing had been restricted through government regulation, primarily municipal government planning, zoning regulations, and red tape. And then number two, really cheap money with the Bank of Canada low interest rate policy and an excessive supply of money. And it led to almost a casino-like situation in the condo market. But we weren't building purpose-built rental at the time, and we weren't building single-family homes at the time. It was only these condos, and it was condos that were oriented toward investors that were going to not occupy, but were going to rent it out, and not to owner-occupiers, people that were actually going to buy the condos to live in. A lot of money that could have and should have been invested in the stock market or in debt securities was taken away from that and invested in this real estate pre-construction condo casino. And, we've heard so many stories of people that bought, 2, 3, 6, 10 different condos in a pre-construction because they were counting on that, the price appreciation would be in excess of their deposit by the time that they had to come and deliver the final payment upon closing, 4 to 5 years later. And I think it's coming home to roost. We're going to get more deliveries this year of condominiums built over the course of the last 4 to 5 years than ever in history, I'm told. But at the same time, because these pricing that, as Ron talked about, was based on something in excess of $1,000, order of magnitude $1,200 a square foot, and yet prices today on the real estate market are less than $1,000 per square foot. The coming challenge is going to be, I think, devastating, because the 20% deposit or 15 to 20% deposit that these investors put down was that $150 to $200 a buildable square foot. Sorry. And the prices have come down by about $200 a square foot, so that they've lost their deposit. And now what they've got to do is they've got to go out and get financing against a condo that they bought at $1,200 a square foot that's now selling, according to Ron, at $970, and the banks are only going to give you a certain percentage of that. And the cost of carrying that has gone up by 3 to 4-fold because of higher interest rates than it was before. And so, based on $1,000 a square foot and 65 to 75% financing, you're only going to get $750 a square foot in debt. And so therefore you're going to have to come up with another $250 a square foot at $1,000 at 1,000 square feet. That's $250,000 at 500 square feet apartment, which would be sort of the comparable reasonable one bedroom or bachelor. That's $125,000 that they got to come up with as additional money, down payment effectively. And then the bank might come in with the balance. And then what he's saying is that the rent that used to cover the mortgage payment is no longer covering the mortgage payment. It's $500 less than the mortgage payment. So they're putting in another $500 a month, or, a couple $1,000, $6,000 a year. So they've lost $200,000 on that one condo. They're going to have to come up with another $125,000. Then they're going to have to come up with $6,000 a year in covering of losses. And that's if everything works out. And what he's described is this vicious downward spiral cycle, such that if some of those people don't close, then the prices will go down even more. And if they've bought a couple of these condos and they got to come up with multiple amounts of the money, it's going to be a challenge. What Ron doesn't think is that it's going to also have an impact on single-family homes, because he's saying that the supply of single-family homes is so low that and demand is so high that it won't impact that. I'm not sure about that. Like, it just makes sense that living space is living space, homes are homes, and people think about condos, townhomes, duplexes, and then single-family homes. And if you can't afford one, you're going to go to another. And so I've got to believe that this is going to have an impact on single-family homes as well. But I could be wrong. And so I think we got to think about what's caused this. And I think that the low interest rate policy, as long as it went on, has. But I think what it really has been is this restriction that the governments have had, these municipal governments have had, on red tape and regulation in regards to zoning rules, in regards to amendments to zoning rules to get building permits to build the things that people want to build, such that the pricing ends up being outrageously high. Now, we could afford those outrageously prices as long as people had this expectation of continued appreciation and interest rates are low, but we can no longer afford to pay that red tape and its development fees that, are $100,000 a condo or a house or a home. So it comes down to this argument that we had right at the end about ideology versus competency, and what the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK has announced, that the national government is going to completely override local zoning rules and impose upon all the local towns new zoning regulations. And BC has done some of this. Ontario has talked about it, but not really done it. And the national government has sort of provided these incentives through the infrastructure fund, but not really done it. And I think part of the problem is that the local councillors and city councils end up getting very influenced by their local electorates and the low turnout, such that they end up having to almost do what those local established elites that tend to be older and homeowners demand. And so therefore they have become beholden to those interests, rather than doing necessarily what's the right thing for the city, for the country, for the entire population. I think what you're going to see in the next little while is provinces and the federal government imposing more planning and zoning rules comparable to what's being proposed in the UK. Now, we'll probably watch what happens in the UK and see if it actually has an impact, and or if there's blowback from the local governments. But this idea that Stephen Julius spoke about on Monday night, that Ron Butler spoke about last night, or tonight, sorry, that competency in government is more important than ideology, I happen to think rings true. And I think that, in the past and present, we've often elected people based on popularity, based on whether they got great hair, whether they're young, whether they're fit, whether we think they look good. But really what government does is runs the economy. And competency has got to be a really important issue. And when times are tough, it's got to be an even more important issue. And as Ron says, unemployment is up. As we've talked about on this show before, on a per capita basis, we're in a recession, not on a total basis because of growth in the population, but if it's on a per capita basis, which is what should be more important to all of us, we're in a recession. Our productivity has declined by 40% relative to the United States. Our prosperity has declined. We used to be up in the top tier of comparable disposable income to U.S. states. Now we're supposedly equal to Alabama, down near the bottom. We got to ask ourselves, what went wrong? And that old adage about, the people get the government they deserve. We've been getting the government we deserve. Maybe we've got to smarten up a little bit and think about competency a lot more. Think about the experience that the people have had. Think about the resumes that they've got. Think about the judgments they're going to make. Think about the decisions and the policies that they have. And we need to have a government that is going to be a lot more competent, that's going to manage our economy a lot better, that's going to cut down a lot of this red tape and regulation, that's going to ensure that we've got a home that everyone can afford. I worry that it's going to get worse before it gets better. If you talk to Ron, if you talk to Stephen Julius about what happened in the United Kingdom, if you speak with some of the economists I had on last week, I think what they're saying is that prosperity is down, productivity is down, unemployment is up, inflation is coming down, but not very quickly. Interest rates are coming down, but not very quickly. I think we're headed in for a tough time in the housing market, a tough time in the employment market, a tough time economically. I worry it's going to happen. It's going to hurt our exchange rate, our currency relative to the US dollar, which is going to import some inflation and make it more difficult for us to import goods, really difficult to go on trips to the United States. And I think that we're actually going to have a housing slowdown, even when we're short of homes, because of these strange high prices, high mortgage payments, that even though we need homes, people can't afford the costs. Builders get laid off. Development companies, contractors, sub-trades go bankrupt. And it's a real mess. And I think that mess lies at the fault of incompetent government, red tape, regulation, delays in getting approval, and the low interest rate policy that went on way too long. How do we get out of it? We got to get inflation down. We got to get interest rates down. And we've got to get red tape and regulation rational out of the system. And it's got to be out of the system in housing. It's got to be out of the system in approval of natural resource development. It's just got to get out of the system. We need to make our economy more efficient, more productive, more prosperous again. Thanks. That's Brian Crombie for the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I love bringing you interesting different people and then being able to not only listen to them, but comment on thereafter. All of my shows are not only broadcast on 960 AM, but I post them all as podcasts and videocasts after the fact on my website, briancrombie.com, as well as on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and on all those podcast servers that are available. Please check me out. Thanks. Good night, everybody.